What's up, people? What's up? Welcome to another episode of Trap No More podcast. I know I probably caught some of you by surprise on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. I know you guys are used to going out there on Sunday evenings, but we made some adjustments for our special guest here. Rumor has it that, Sunday's church day and chill day. And um, yeah, she just relaxes on Sundays, right? But yeah, man, I'm excited about today's guest. Once again, you guys know I just don't be bringing in nobody on this platform. Somebody coming on this platform is definitely going to hit you with some hope, with some inspiration. Man, they may even challenge you to do something different with what you've been doing, right? But anyways, if you haven't hit the subscribe, if you haven't hit the like, do that now. Don't forget to hit the bell for notifications for every time we come on. And also, man, I just want to just thank all of you. Man, there's been a lot of recent new subscribers. I appreciate you dearly. Man, send it to your friends, your family, to your enemies. Send it to whoever you can to subscribe to this channel, man. I definitely appreciate it. And I just wanted to give an update, man. I just got out of Chino prison just a little while ago. Believe it or not, it was funny when I was driving there at about 8 o'clock. I was talking to this friend of mine and I was like, man, I'm trying to swoop through this traffic right now. And I'm like telling him, man, I'm in a hurry to get. He said, where you going? I said, man, I'm on my way to prison. And he started laughing. He said, man, I don't think I know any ex-convict, ex-lifer at that is in a hurry to get to prison. I said, well, I got a great group of men that are waiting for me, and I don't want to be late. I don't want to hold them up. And I get there and I end up being held up anyway because they had to modify their program because of electricity. Something was going on with the electricity. The lights were out, power was out. So I didn't get in until about 10:30. About 10:15 is when the lights turned on and they said, come on, let's get you through. So I was able to go in, but another great group today. And I know I told you guys that the original curriculum, right? The original curriculum is all about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. The belief is, and I know it firsthand, that if we could change the way we think, we'll change the way we behave, and that changes the outcomes, right? And that's what we're trying to teach these inmates. And at first, I was kind of like, prison fellowship ain't even like, I mean, it's a Christian organization, and the curriculum has nothing to do with Jesus Christ. But let me just add, the reason why I didn't have the curriculum that was Jesus Christ because that they weren't providing the DVD for me, which is required for the Jesus aspect of the curriculum that I have. It's called Alpha, and what it is, it's a video. It's like I want to say it's like a 8 disc series, and each week it has different these different subjects. So last week, the main subject was, if God was real and you met him, what would be your question to him? And today was all about, who is Jesus Christ? And the video goes on. I believe it's like in Europe somewhere because they have like a European accent. But they go around and kind of ask people, who's Jesus to you? And all kinds of different answers came forward. So after the video, we process it, who's Jesus to us. So we had a good group this morning. It was kind of short, but it was still powerful, very impactful to these men. And I'm just excited, man, to share that report with you because I know a lot of you have loved ones that are incarcerated. And man, encourage them to get into these self-help groups, man. There's a lot of different things that are going on in there right now. And of course, they get their rack credits, which means they come home earlier if they succeed. So definitely encourage your loved ones to jump in these self-help groups. So without further ado, we're going to jump into today's podcast. I have next to me the lovely Miss Jennifer Farias. And I've been knowing her for quite a few years, and um, I just know one aspect of her story, and I'm not going to share that. I'm going to let her share it as we get into it. But she has an amazing story, and we're just going to jump into it, Jennifer.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay.
Let's do
All
it.
right. Thank you for taking this Saturday afternoon to join us here on
Yeah.
this platform. I appreciate you. And I'm going to tell you this, what I usually tell most of my guests, some of my guests, not all of them, but whatever you feel comfortable sharing, share it. Okay. If I
Yeah.
ask a question and it's kind of out, just say, you know what, I'd rather not talk about that right
Yeah.
now.
I
Okay.
could do that.
Because I know it's not easy to jump on here and just spill the beans.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. I mean, but I know you do fine.
Yeah.
So Jennifer, why don't you take us back and tell us a little bit about where you come from? What was home like growing up? You know, um, anything that stands out during them early years, why don't you share that with us?
Yeah, sure. So, to be very honest, I have a lot of black spaces, to be honest. I don't remember a lot of years. I remember, I mean, I was born in Chicago on January 4th, 1971. And so that's where I was born. I remember growing up for the most part in the southern states. I remember living in, this is like before the age of, say, 11 ish. Uh, so before that, I mean, obviously, I don't remember being an infant, but I was born in Chicago, and my mom married the only dad I've ever known, but she actually got pregnant by a Puerto Rican immigrant. And so I'm half Puerto Rican and half white, or I guess the white is mixed with some Native American as well. And so that's my mom. And then the dad I only ever knew, he was born in Kentucky, and my mom was born in Arkansas. So definitely Southern roots. Um, Growing up, I remember, as far back as I can remember, I remember being poor, very poor. We didn't have a lot of basic necessities that some people would call life deal breakers, like toilet paper and those sort of things. We just simply didn't. We had them sometimes, but there was many times we did not have those things. So we were extremely poor. And my dad was a drinker. You know, he was a alcoholic as long as I remember back. He was always a drinker. He was small in stature, and somehow he still managed to get in fights with people. So behind his drinking. Uh so my mom, she wasn't a drinker, but she had another family um before myself, and I have one other younger brother that belonged to my mom and the only dad I knew. So before us, she had a whole other family. She was married and had 4 kids. Um, I I'll just leave that like that. But she had some traumas um, through that. I really don't know a lot about her childhood, but I tend to remember um, that her mom may have been a little bit rough on her. I don't really know a lot about her background. I want to try to stay in order here and not ramble too much. But so growing up, I was born in Chicago. Then we lived in, from what I remember, in the younger years, I remember living in Alabama. I think I may have been around 5 years old when we lived there. And then I remember when Elvis died, we moved a lot. We moved a lot, and I'm not really sure what all the motivation was about those moves, but I tend to remember that it was always kind of looking for a fresh start, after whatever happened. And that was really tough. The tough part about my childhood is just watching, it was just crisis after crisis after crisis. Homelessness, being extremely poor, where we really didn't have, like I said, basic things. I remember we would always run out of food by the end of the month and things like that. I seem to remember that the longest portion of my younger childhood was in living in Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama. And then, like I was saying, when Elvis died, right around that time, we moved to Memphis, Tennessee. We lived for there a while. And then we lived in, I think we went back to Chicago, and we may have lived in Florida, but I don't remember. I know we lived in Texas when I was about 11 years old. And here I'm starting to get a little bit older now. So, all this moving around is starting to really, I'm, kind of starting to recognize it and kind of maybe, resisting the moving and the moving. So after that, we ended up, when we first came to California, actually, I don't remember it all perfectly, but I know we came to California after Texas, and we were up in Northern California because that's where my mom's mom was. Her dad had passed away many years ago. And so her mom lived there, and then she had some siblings. I made actually a really good friendship with one of my cousins that was my age. His name was Lester. And I spent a lot of time with him. We spent a lot of time together, and we were just the same age group and talked about the same things. And um, we lived there in a trailer with my Grandma Lenny. And honestly, I remember staying with her for some time, but I don't remember a lot about her. And then a lot of it's just choppy, to be honest. I know my dad was there at some point. My dad wasn't there. And we lived there. I think we went back to Chicago for a while. And I think we came back, and that's when we landed in Southern California. So then from 1983, I've been in California. So the things before that that were kind of traumatizing, growing up, and I believe, I don't think my story is any worse off than anyone else's, or I don't think it's all that unique, to be honest. Uh, but it was just watching my mom and dad. I wouldn't say they fought a lot, but his drinking was a source of a lot of problems. I remember he would get a job. He seemed to be always able to get jobs, but it seemed like he couldn't keep them for long. He'd get a good job, we'd all be excited. The next thing we know, he was lost his job and drinking. And I remember, like I said, homelessness, going to shelters. Sometimes my mom would be separated from my dad, and um, I think it was probably so that we could go to those shelters, because a lot of times they don't take the whole family. I mean, I think that's still a problem today. I don't think they act like the men, well, they can take care of themselves, when some of them may need some help too. But he was an alcoholic as far back as I remember. Um, there were some traumatizing things that I saw my family go through, and I think the hardest part of it was watching them struggle so much, and it just hurts to see your parents go through stuff like that. And it seemed to be never ending. Like there was always another crisis, whether it was, my dad's alcoholism found him in jail. I know that he was in a hospital at one point. And I remember the jokes he made when he came back from that hospital. He would just kind of laugh it off and uh, make jokes about it. But I mean, I found him myself in some pretty bad situations from his drinking, medically, where I feared for his life and some of the conditions I would find him. But I don't think that there was this was like in the 70s. So I don't think that, treatment centers were like they are today. Back then it was treated more like just,
Evil spirits.
yeah, social pariah, basically.
Mhm.
You were
Yes.
treated, and the treatment that was available would basically be like the insane asylum.
Mhm.
That's what I remember. That's my perception of what was available to him. So we did end up here in 1983, and I had that little brother with me, that I really cared for him. But we got in California in 1983. I think I was 11, right after Texas. And when we were in Texas, we were homeless.
Mhm.
We were living in our car. In fact, we were living in our car by the beach. So it was like upscale homeless, I guess you'd call. I mean, I remember really enjoying the beach there, but we were literally in a newspaper article because we were homeless and poor, and it was just really, for a child at age 11, it's super embarrassing, right? And I remember they came into that article, and the thing about it, I didn't understand really. Like my mom cut the article out and put it in the photo album, like a memorial. Like I don't know, I didn't understand a lot of what they were thinking, my parents. Um, there was something else I wanted to share in that department. I'll call it. About that time, but we were, homeless, living in our car. And I remember at the end of the night, we would go. I can still remember some of this pizza that was so good that we would go to some of these restaurants. They would give us whatever didn't sell at the end of the night. And I remember being so excited when we would go get that food. My dad also used to steal some of the food out of the dumpster from McDonald's and stuff like that because they threw a lot of food away that was still wrapped in all of that. But, we were just really poor. And growing up, it was just, I have a lot of black areas that I don't really remember all of it. Those are the things that stand out. But, my dad being an alcoholic and having, such a problem with the drinking, and we never had really any stability because of that. And then my mom, she wasn't a drinker, but she had a lot of trauma, and it was clearly not dealt with at all. So I feel like she just went through some ups and downs. And again, back then there wasn't like an understanding about mental health and all the stuff we have about mental health today. Back then it was just there was just nothing. I don't remember ever hearing about mental health help or anything like that. But she was up and down, and I got a lot of pain out of that relationship. I really was afraid of her, to be honest.
Jen, let me ask you something real
Yeah.
quick though. Did your mom ever self-medicate with anything to try to deal with that trauma? I mean, you said your dad was
Mm-mm.
alcoholic, but your mom, I mean,
No.
no substance to try to help?
Maybe food, probably food. But no, she wasn't a drinker at all. She
No.
wasn't. Mm-mm. She wasn't a drinker. She wasn't into any of that. And I know my dad, I remember being a kid and my dad would take me to the bars with him. And I would love to go because everybody would give me money for candy, and I would go put it in the jukebox because I was just from a very young age loved music. Just loved it. I would, keep track of like the top countdowns. I remember my dad stole well, not stole, I guess, but he got me a stereo out of a Goodwill donation box. That, they have those boxes where you just drop stuff off. But I just loved that stereo. And once I got that stereo, that was my escape right there.
Yeah.
So even today, I would say I'm quite a music buff, and I know a lot of a lot of different genres about music and stuff. And I'm that person, they'll say, "Well, who sings that? Ask Jennifer," But
Hey, let me ask you something
yeah.
also. So with all your moving around from state to state and town to town, how did that affect your education?
Yeah, so it absolutely affected I would say more socially than I always did really well in school. Even up until I did end up dropping out. I did really well in school. I remember I believe my mom taught me to read before I ever went to school. I remember knowing to read how to read in advance. So I was grateful for that, and I did pretty well. But the biggest part for me was the friendships, and then the fractured, and then you just go and you just this happens over and over and over. And by the time we moved to California, here I'm about 11 when we got here, I guess. I started to kind of voice some of my frustration about the moving all the time because it was just I was tired of it, changing schools, like you said, and having to make new friends
Did that
and
come easy, making new friends?
I don't remember it that it came easy making new friends. What I remember is that I didn't know how long I'd be able to be friends with them. It was more the abrupt disconnect that I would have to have with all these relationships,
Mhm.
you know? So that was just really hard. Um
And did you feel that you had to keep like your your in-house issues private, like, or did you invite friends over? Were friends allowed to come over and hang out with you, sleepovers or anything like
mhm.
that? Or was it more like, don't want nobody coming to my house to see my dad, my
Yeah.
mom going through what they go through?
Excuse me. Yeah, no, I don't I did have friends that came over, they slept over, I slept over. We did do those things, but there were it was always a risk because there would be embarrassment, you know. But I mean, my parents would welcome friends and things like that. My mom, she was, they're just kind of different in some ways. So I would be embarrassed because when friends would come over, my mom would ask them to do stuff like help do chores and things like that. And I just would always be really embarrassed about that. I remember going back to the school thing and how it affected my education. Being poor was a hard part because I remember being scolded for taking a bath. There's no reason you have to take a bath every day, things like that. Or I had to wear my sorry, I don't want to cry, but sorry. I don't want this to be a blubber fest.
No. I mean,
So
time.
um my mom would buy most of our clothes from the thrift store and whatnot, which who cares about that? But then I would get in trouble because we'd have to wear 2 days in a row. Sorry.
Joe, you want to grab some tissue?
So I have some in my purse right there. I just would get in trouble for that. And then there were times like like one of my friends would give me a pair of pants and I would be so excited. The next thing I know, my dad would have them on and he would wear them for like a week. And it was just a pair of jeans. And I was so mad about that because I finally got a pair of jeans, but he somehow got them on and never took them off. And they didn't care about hygiene and things like that. And so when I did, I was, I got kind of like I think I'm too good for this family type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry, you guys.
No, it's okay. It's all right. You're doing good.
It's just, I don't know. I just get really emotional anytime I talk about them. And they're both passed away now, my mom and my dad. I learned about my dad's passing like a couple years afterward. And then my mom, later on, I connected with her, but I could not ever have a real relationship with her because I couldn't trust her to not hurt me. So that's how it ended. But anyway, going back to that, those are the things that I struggled with, being poor, because obviously the worst thing you could do at that age is wear the same clothes you wore yesterday at school. So, and asking for things like there was no deodorant in our house. I mean, I only learned about these things from my friends, and so then I was like, well, and then I would ask for these things like or conditioner for my hair, and I would, like I said, they would just um I remember being said, you think you're too good for this family type stuff. So that was kind of hard, but we landed in California. Of all the places in California that we could have immigrated to, we chose San Bernardino. I don't know why. I have no idea how that is how it ended up, but that would be the last stop for me anyway. And so I'll get this worst trauma over with here. So we lived in San Bernardino. I grew up between Highland and East Street, between Highland and Baseline on East Street in San Bernardino. And honestly, it was the 80s and it was just a party. I don't even remember hardly seeing the police around at all. It was just everybody was out and doing what they're doing. So what happened was I came home from school one day, and one thing I'll say, because they may pop up here and there, but I never had the opportunity to truly build any relationships with any blood relatives. Because if I did meet them, I would meet them once and then I'd like never see them again. Or we'd be with them for a year, we lived here, and then I'd never see them again and things like that. So, I did meet some family members on both my dad and my mom's side. But again, those relationships were like short little pieces of time and there was no continuity. So I never built any lasting relationships with them. Like today, I have Facebook friends with a couple of half sisters, but we've never, like one of them, I met her for a short period of time. But then, the relationship just fractured after that. I mean, if you could even call that. But so when I was 13, as I mentioned, I had started to voice, and I think I say this because I wonder if this was maybe why my mom decided to do what she did. So I came home from school one day, and it just so happened that a cousin was visiting. It was an adult cousin, adult female cousin. She was visiting at that time. And I I don't know, I just had a really weird feeling that day. I really did. I don't know what was about. And during this time, I'll add that I met 2 friends at school, and we were like best friends for the duration of our even today. We haven't seen each other in a long time, but still, it was very treasured friendships. And there were 3 of us, and we were like best friends, and everybody knew us, and everybody like, "Oh my gosh, you guys are still hanging out together?" So, I met them during this time, or just prior to this time. And
Mhm.
so they started talking about moving again, and I'm pretty sure I was like, "No more, please." Like, I really, really bonded with these 2 friends. And so and they both lived close by, and they both had the same story as I did. So we practically raised each other because our parents were alcoholics. One of them, both parents were alcoholics. The other one, mom was an alcoholic, absent father, and, mom also had very, very clear, mental issues. And so we basically took care of each other because of the way that our parenting was going on. Um, well, I'll back up just a little bit. So, right around this age, I started getting unsolicited sympathy from people, neighbors, um, people that we would just come to know. I started getting, like I said, unsolicited. They would start noticing the way my family life was, and they would start saying things like, "This isn't right. That's not right. I'm sorry you have to deal with that," type of stuff. And I was offended. I would stick up for my parents, like, "It's not like that." And but it made me think, like, "Oh, it's just not me. Other people are noticing there's something wrong with this picture here." And so, yeah, during that time was when I'd made those friends, and as I mentioned, I was very vocal about not wanting to move again. I came home from school one day, and I believe I was 13 at this time. I came home from school, and something was off. I don't even remember. I can't even put it into words how my thought process were working at that time, but I just knew something wasn't right. And I don't even know, like I said, I can't really explain it, but long and short, I came home and I was waiting around for my mom because I guess she got her welfare check that day, and I was just waiting for her to get back. I don't remember for any specific reason, just that she should be back by now. And the day wore on, and then all of a sudden, and including this picture, one of my friends, her mom lived across the street now. They moved over where we were at. And so we were at her house, and then that's when my cousin told me, "Your mom left, and she told me not to tell you until after the bus left the station." And I just sorry.
Okay. Doing good, Jen.
I just was stunned, I guess is the best word. I don't even know what I thought. I just was like, I knew something wasn't right. And a lot of that day, I don't remember all of the day, but I do remember going, because my dad was still here. So I went to go. I remember very briefly talking to him. I don't even remember discussing her leaving or why she left. She took my little brother with her. And he said at one point that he was going to take me with him back to Chicago. And I remember that. And then I remember him saying, I'm sorry, I can't take you with me. And so, as bizarre as this is, one of those people that was offering sympathy to not just me, but my brother as well, was the landlord. He lived across the street with a whole bunch of other apartments. We were like in a fourplex and we were like down in one of the downstairs units. And he would always come take me and my brother to eat and things like that. Or I just remembering him, reaching out to us. And so they left. They just left. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't even remember thinking about what am I going to do. I don't remember that, but I know he stepped up and he was like, "You can stay with me. We'll go to the court and get some paperwork." And he did. He went and paid to become my legal guardian. And so his name was Don. He was a nice man. He was the manager of all these apartments because they're spotted all along that stretch between Baseline and Highland. Some of them aren't even there anymore. But he took me in and I got bought school clothes and I had lunch money and I was doing well in school. And I was even a teacher's. This was my ninth grade. I had just started the ninth grade and it started off really well. I was doing good in all my classes. I was a teacher's aide for the geography teacher who was everybody would say he was like one of the hardest teachers, but I was his teacher's aide. And I'll never forget him because he was very stern, fair, but he was about business and he wasn't playing no games. And it was funny because he looked just like Dr. Martin Luther King and he had a big picture of him on the wall. And so I always remember him. So some of this, like, I'm not sure how all this happened because I remember that I got pregnant in the ninth grade and then I dropped out of school. But then I had twins when I was 15. So I don't know exactly how it all happened. Maybe that wasn't the real reason I stopped going to school. I can't remember. But I never really thought about that until right now about the dates not lining up. Like I thought I was 13 and then oh yeah, so I was 13 when my parents left. And then I was going to school and I was in the ninth grade. I probably um turned 14 somewhere around there and then I got pregnant right away when I was 15 and then I actually had them when I was 15. So yeah, I guess that timeline would add up, but so I met a boy at school and his mom was a nurse and he was just a funny guy. It was kind of like another one of us, me and the other two girls. We were kind of just all friends and I don't even know how it ended up that we got boyfriend and girlfriend, but anyway, I ended up getting pregnant. Well, when that happened, I just have to tell you this one other thing. So, while I was there after my parents left, all of a sudden I get a letter from my mom and she tried to guilt trip me. And I don't want to talk badly about her, but this really happened. She sent me a letter and she told me that it was really hard for them because without me they weren't getting as much welfare check.
Oh wow.
And then she like put the pressure on me to come home as if I ran away or something. And so I just had a really hard time with that. And so a lot of it was, excuse me, I'm so sorry. A lot of it was like I was a good kid. I did what I was told. I didn't give my parents no grief at all. I did what I was told. I was afraid not to. And it just would make you wonder, like, why? Why would they leave the one kid that's doing all the chores? Like, um, yeah, it was just these are the things, these are the traumas that I've had to overcome in life. And again, lots of people have, way worse problems. So I don't want to make it like I'm not a victim, but this is what happened in my life. And so when I got pregnant with the twins, Don, the man that took me, he was an older guy, an older man. He was like not happy. Said, I'm sending you back with your parents. And I was like, oh gosh, because while it was heartbreaking and traumatic for them to leave like that, there was a part of me that felt a lot of relief from all of the ongoing crisis mode. And so he did. He sent me back, and at this point they're back together. They're living up back by in Northern California, Marysville, Sutter. I remember a couple of the towns up there. So I'm pregnant. I'm living there, and then they're of course still dirt poor, and they don't have anything really. My dad's still drinking. My mom is just as bad off as ever. She's just not doing well mentally. She's just a broken person. I felt really bad for her that yeah, I don't think she ever got free this side of earth, this side of heaven, I should say. So then I got sent back up there, and this horrible situation happened. Like I said, crisis after crisis. So I'm pregnant. Todd, my kid's dad, he came up there to see me because we're still going to be together, right? And his mom paid for him to come up, or did she come up? I think she might have come up herself. She came up with him, I believe. And when she came, she brought food. I remember specifically she brought those big cans of Campbell's soups, like the hearty ones that would have like meatballs and stuff like that. And my parents were so offended by that. I remember them giving me grief about um, because they brought me food when I was pregnant. Because I don't remember, but I probably told me, yeah, there's like not a lot to eat and stuff. So she brought food. And so I think they came and left, but while they were there, I know Todd was there. Um, my dad had gone out and got drunk. He was at a park or something, and he picked a fight with a big old group of guys, and then he headed back home, and they followed him home and came right into our house. My mom and my brother went out there, and I remember they slapped my mom and knocked her glasses off. They broke my brother's nose. That was really hard. It's really hard to see that. And Todd, I was trying to be out there with them, and I'm all pregnant. And he's like, "You cannot be out there." He put me in the bathroom and locked us in there. He's like, "Stay here. You cannot go out there." And then he ended up staying there with me because he was trying to make sure I didn't leave out of the bathroom. He just wanted me to stay in there and stay safe. So after that, I was just horrified. I was just like, I can't do this again. And um I ended up leaving from there. So his mom ended up, I think, giving me a ticket or something, and I came back down here with them. I lived with them for a while, and then I had twins when I was 15, which I was. Whew, this is not a good part. Like this is like my biggest failure. I was not able to be a good mom for the kids. By this time I was a complete party animal, and that's all I did was find ways to get high and escape, you know? And so I had them till they were about 3. And I mean, I loved them, obviously. I cared for them, but I was just a messed up kid myself. And for whatever reason, I know lots of girls that have a baby when they're 15, 14, and they still step up and be a mom. I've seen it. For whatever reason, I wasn't capable of doing that. And so his mom he got married and uh, we separated. I don't remember the exact timing, but he moved back up to Washington, and that's where they were from. And so she moved back up there. She What I was doing was I left the kids with her, and then I would go do my thing. But then I would always go back to see the kids. And the way it happened, I don't know what a lot of people think about what happened, but what happened was, and I'm not making any excuses for my behavior, but what happened was I went to go see them one day and the windows were wide open and nobody was in there. That's how I found out that she took them. And so in my state, that just sent me in a downward spiral. And then that's when I I had attempted suicide several times by taking pills. One of the guys I dated had some kind of pharmacy connection, and um, I mean, this is a lot of pills that could have killed several people that I took, but I still woke up the next day, and I remember that being so mad about it. But yeah, that's when I think I just gave in and I just was drinking, drugging, everything I could, looking for love in all the wrong places, the same old cliches, you know. Um, but I will say, you know, the Lord was always there. I remember very specific times when I was a little girl. I mean, at this time, I think we were living in like a campsite in our car, and we didn't have any tents or anything like that. But I remember there was a circle, and I remember, well, there was 2 times I remember. When I was a little girl, I remember walking in that circle, talking to the Lord, and I just had the most peace, and I was fine, and He was with me, and I knew He was there. And there was another time that happened too when I was a little girl, and I didn't really recognize what it was until later on in life. But yeah, he was with me. And then when I was 16, when we had the kids and we were living in this apartment, um, there was a local reverend. He was from a Pentecostal church, and he used to come around all the time trying to get everybody to go to church. Actually, no, it started from a girl named Candy that I used to party with. Candy was a party animal too, and she OD'd, I guess, and she had this really crazy experience, and she got saved. She OD'd, and she had, like, a near-death experience, and she ended up going with this church, so because of her, I ended up going to the church. And, the reverend, um, he would always come by, try to get us to go to church and stuff like that. I do remember going. I accepted the Lord. I was, like, 16 at that time, but I didn't have the, I didn't have the follow through because he did come back and I wouldn't answer the door when he would come. I remember one time he's like, "I know you're in there. I can hear the children." But he would come all the time, faithful to try to save us all. Can you get me some more tissue, please? There's a whole pack in my purse. So anyway,
You want some water as well?
sure. That'd be great.
Bam, there's that.
Thank you. I am so sorry.
You're doing great, Jen. Doing great.
I'm gonna have to blow. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
It's gotta be done.
You're good.
Thanks for your patience. I'm so sorry. So yeah, he was there and I did get saved. I accepted Jesus as my savior. I didn't give him much room for lording. But I didn't ever forget that. So I know it was him. And so From there, I went on to have 2 more kids, parties lifestyle, that breaks up, and then one last daughter I had, so 5 kids. And, um sorry. And so that was my life then. Um, it took me a while. I did start to clean up a little bit here and there. Um, but at the end of the day, it was in like 95. It was mostly the same story of, just partying and all this and that. In 1995, I ended up going into a treatment program. And the first attempt, I ended up leaving with some girl and we went out drinking. I got told you can't stay here anymore. And I really wanted to do better. Um, but let me back up a second. The reason I got to that treatment center was because I was in the hospital. Ended up in the hospital because I was, well, the Lord just broke me. Like all the drugs and the alcohol, it all stopped working. It stopped working. It wasn't doing any of the stuff it was doing before. It wasn't masking my pain. It wasn't doing anything for me anymore. It just stopped working. So somehow I ended up reading the Bible. I don't know what I got out of it, but I don't remember reading anything specific. I just remember knowing that's what I needed and I was reading it and just praying and asking the Lord to help me, to save me from this. And I would go to the drug people's house. I would buy drugs, but then I would borrow their phone so I could call the 1-800 helpline. And then, like, my youngest daughter, her dad, he was like, "You're so depressing. It's just depressing." Well, we're drug addicts. It is depressing. Like, I was really starting to see reality of life. And so, yeah, I had like a downward spiral from there. Mentally, the drugs took its toll, and I ended up the psych in the psych ward like 3 different times. Um, one of the times was like a 72-hour hold. I don't know how they do that. I mean, this was back in the early 90s, and I was there for 72 hours. What do they do? They give me a bunch of pills, and so many pills out of a bag, and they send you home. So what do you think I did? I took all the pills. So I don't understand how they do that. But then, so that didn't work again. It just got me really, really sick. And the next thing I knew, I ended up at a treatment center that was like a 2-week thing. And I was heavily sedated by the medication that they gave me. But at somehow it was helping me because I just stopped. All the madness just stopped for a minute, and I was just like almost like just a little baby again. I remember being in that hospital. They basically just keep you medicated and you sleep a lot. But within the time there, I remember certain things that were helping. Like this sweet, beautiful girl. She came in and painted my nails for me. Just little things. And I went through a couple of those, and then finally I got sent home one last time. Oh no, when I ended up in the hospital one last time, because I think it was a total of 3 times. The last time I went to treatment from there. So I was like, "You got choices. You can keep doing this. We can just let you go. We can help you get into a treatment program." And so I went into the treatment program. The first one, as I mentioned, failure. And they're like, "Well, you can't stay here. You can't just go out and come back. That's not how this works." So fine. And so then I was like begging them to please help me find another program. Because at this point, my younger kids were with their dads. And um I just wasn't doing good. So I just begged them to please help me find another program, and they did. I ended up going to Whiteside Manor. Well, that's the men's program. The women's is Salmon House. I know Whiteside Manor is still there. I don't know about the women's program, but this is going to come up again in our story later. But anyway, sorry. With all of that, um, that program, I stayed there for 18 months. I right away started reading my Bible. I knew where to go. Um, I started praying to God, to help me uh, start over, you know, which He did. It took me a really long time to get kids back, though, because I mean, it was just me, and I've never had a job in my life. I'm 28 years old, and I've never worked. I've never driven a car. Like I had done nothing. I dropped out of school, so
Jen, let me
it,
ask you something real quick.
yeah.
So during this time that you're going into treatment and everything, was there anyone trying to do any family reunification, or was it just like your desire? I got to get these kids back,
No,
or did you have contact with them at all during this time?
nope,
So
no.
you somewhere behind your mind, you're saying, I need to get these kids. I need to get myself. And I'm assuming this is where the thoughts that were coming on while you were getting clean and sober.
Yeah. So I mean, honestly, I just didn't have any other choices because it doesn't work anymore. I'm just
Mhm.
going in and out of these hospitals, and my kids need me. I can't have a repeat.
And
So
they were with family at this time, right?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. No, there
So
was no.
none of them ever like officially were adopted out or anything
Oh
like that.
no, no, thank God, no. Um, no, they were with their dads. So from that time in '95, um, like I said, I spent 18 months in that program. I stayed as long as I could because I knew that I was gonna do this once and do it right. And so, yeah, that program was really good, really, really good for me. Some of the programs that seem like they're just, hard, like you got like the military style,
Mhm.
and I was such a broken person, like I really didn't need that. And this program was good, but it was also gentle, and I really needed that at that time. So, um, first 6 months of it, I was, like, in-house, and the director, her name is Barb, she was in one of those pictures I sent you. Um, she was really, um what I would just cry and wail for my kids. It is the hardest thing. Oh, man, it was hard. But, when I would get in those places, I would wanna run, and one time I did, I just ran off, and she came after me in her car, took me back, and so I was able to complete that program, and even from there was how I got my first job. My first job, I worked there for 7 years, and every job I've had has been the Lord, so then I got the kids home, um, the youngest 3, and I was able to go visit my older kids when they were younger, but I didn't have I think I didn't I never really felt like I would be able to take them. I didn't have the confidence of that because, the grandma had them for all those years. But I did get to go to see them, and it was her kindness even that I even got to do that. So I was really thankful to her for that. Um, I'm trying to think where to go next with this. I'm so sorry. This is the one thing I didn't want to do is cry like a baby.
You're doing good. You're doing great, Jen.
So after sorry. So then sorry, I gotta blow again. I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine.
Um, so when the kids were ready to come, when I was ready to bring the kids home, I had to have a place to take them. So I ended up going to uh, the Cesar Chavez Community Center. They had something where they match room renters to people that want to rent out rooms. And so I was able to meet a good friend. Her name is Margaret. And with is my face okay? About as good as it's gonna get. Um, so I was able to rent a room from her. We became friends, and that's how I got introduced to the first church that I really stuck with and had a lot of growth there. It was a small community church in um, Paris, Mead Valley. And so from Margaret, I ended up renting a room from uh, the pastor's son-in-law and his wife for a while, and then I ended up living in the ministry house. This was about a 3-year period after I got cleaned up. So this was a really, really um, a good time in my life. I mean, I did start with going to meetings, 12-step meetings, so I won't knock them because they can be very helpful. I did go through the steps, but even in there, I mean, I knew right away that the Bible was the supreme, that these were going to help you, but you need Jesus. And so um, I went to this when I started going to that church. So one time we went on a little outing. We went to go to see a play, and it's kind of funny when I bring this up because around that same time, that the play was called Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
They go around. It's a family. They literally go around everywhere. They do this play, and what they portray is different people, different walks of life, and if they died today, where would they go, and why, and why not? And so that play was really powerful. Um, so I already told you what the play was about, but at some point they were going to talk about the cross, right? And so during that part, in the audience, you're not expecting it, right? But the next thing you know, that here comes Jesus down the aisle carrying the cross, and everybody's yelling, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" It's just very powerful. So that right there, that did me in a good way. So that's when I really was like, this isn't a game. This is real, And so, I surrendered to the Lord, and was faithful in that church for a while. And then that church had which incidentally, it came from a split. And it wasn't really a split, it was more like a dissolution. It kind of dissolved because people just went in different directions. And some of the things um, that I kind of like, I used it as an excuse. What other people were dealing with, I used as an excuse for me to leave because I did have some resentments about some things. But so I didn't cause it, but um as a result of what was going on, it was my way out. And so that was the most foolish thing I ever did. So I took the kids and I got me an apartment not far from my job, and it was only a matter of time. I stopped going to church, and the landlady lived like a few doors down from me, and every day she offered me a beer. And I was like, "No, that's not what I'm about today." And eventually, no church, no fellowship, no support system, just work, and that's all you do, come home. And eventually I started drinking again. And um during that time I was dating someone, and my I was not good drunk, not a good drunk. And I there was a kind of an altercation, not with the boyfriend, it was with my daughter, and I grabbed her when she was trying to leave the situation. And so um long and short of it, I don't want to go into it too much because I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable about it. But uh so they got taken away. And when that happened, I was like, nobody had to tell me what to do. I immediately checked into a treatment program. Um, I repented and turned back to the Lord, and the kids came home almost a year to the day. So that's when I started out. I don't know how I got mixed up, but that's when I ended up renting that room from Margaret, um, because I needed somewhere for the kids to be. But I might have mixed that up a little bit, but anyway, those are the things that happened. The sequence might be off, and so wait a minute. Oh no, I went back to rent a room from her again. That's why I rented a room for her 2 times.
Okay.
And so then the second time I the second time was when, they came home in a year. And then I ended up getting myself together, I guess, or the Lord got me together. That's the only together I've ever had. Um and so I got a place with the kids, and then okay, yeah. So then I'd start I start backsliding again um, during that time. I went back to drinking quite a bit, and the kids are older now, so I'm sure it just wore them out. They're all in high school, and it wasn't like that's all I did, but still, living that double life, it doesn't work. And um, these are the days of like when everybody was just starting to have cell phones and all that stuff. Well, not just starting, but just starting in my group circle of people. So I saw it was on Facebook, not Facebook, um, on MySpace, and I saw this testimony on there. I was just browsing around, and I saw all of a sudden it popped up. My now husband, his testimony. It was a picture, had his testimony, and I was just so touched by it. And I don't tell me why. I said, I'm going to write him a letter. Oh, no, I wrote back on there. I reached out on there. I was like, man, what a testimony. At that time, I was involved in church. I was involved in women's leadership in the church I was going to, and I had been there for quite some time. Um, so I did stop drinking somewhere in there. Um, but anyways, I ended up someone wrote back, and it was a lady. It was Pam. It was a lady, Pam, who knows she's connected some way. So anyway, she was responding, and she was like, "Yeah, he really needs to hear from some Christian women." it was. She was like, "Yeah, he doesn't have access to this, but we made it for him, so maybe he could get some better people to write to him and stuff like that instead of the kind of people that he was getting, or something along those lines." And so I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to write him," and I wasn't thinking anything romantic at all. I really wasn't. And so I just wanted to, like, I just felt compelled to send him like a letter of encouragement. And so I did. And it's funny when I think about that, because how many times have your friends said, "Hey, just write this guy. You want to write this guy in prison? You're just going to be a pit." I'm like, "No, I'm not trying to do that." And so I wasn't thinking any of that. I just felt compelled, like I said. So I did. I wrote him a letter, and then it wasn't like too fast, but he ended up writing back. I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And all of a sudden, the tone in the letters started changing. And I was like, "Oh no. Oh no, Lord. What is this? I gotta know, Lord. I can't be doing this. I don't need nothing, Lord. I'm good, Lord." I was like so scared, like to make a mistake. And I was like, this was heavy prayer time, because I was like, I cannot go down this road if it's not with the Lord. There's no way I cannot do this. And so, lo and behold, over time, the letters got frequent and more frequent. And it was kind of funny because when I finally sent him a picture, I was like, "There, now aren't you glad I'm not a 90-year-old man?"
That you were
'Cause who do you?
catfishing.
Yeah, because
He was
how do you
catfishing,
know,
huh?
right?
Hey, let
So
me tell you something though. When I heard this story, right? I mean,
yeah,
I didn't hear it from this perspective, but I
yeah,
did know that he met somebody through I thought at the time he said Facebook, but okay,
yeah,
MySpace,
yeah.
right? Uh I thought that for reals, I thought that he was like catfishing because I'm like, who's writing somebody saying I'm a lifer, I possibly may never get out. And
Right.
was that in his testimony that he was doing life in
No,
prison, or was it
I don't remember those
so he
details in
was
there,
catfishing
but
you?
I just remember the I definitely remember the story of redemption.
Oh,
That's what
okay.
grabbed
Oh,
me,
okay.
from his
But you
testimony.
did know that he was in prison at this time?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I knew he was in prison for sure. I didn't know all the details or anything like that. I just, um, definitely was affected by the testimony of his redemption. So,
Okay.
so anyway, the letters started getting more frequent, and after about, I'm gonna say, because the first letter was in 2007, and then I think after that, I'm trying to remember. I think I went to go see him for the first time in 2009, if I'm not mistaken.
Is that when he was in Chocoala? He was in
Yeah,
Chocoala?
yeah. And so, um, but I mean, we started talking on the phone before that as well. So, but not many people have a picture of the first day you met your husband, right?
Mhm.
So we have that. So praying it through and all that, the Lord really did give me confirmation about him, that he was gonna be my husband. I mean, I'm Christian, I'm trying to live right, I'm not really looking for anything other than that, right? And even that I wasn't really looking for at the moment. Um, I kinda gave up on that for a while, which God definitely used that time, um, for sure, to grow me in, a lot of different ways. Um, but yeah, so I just have to share this story though. Within that, he graduated from the school that he went through in there to be a drug and alcohol counselor. And so I went, and I think a couple of my kids went with me to the ceremony of his graduation. And so I'm sitting down, and the professor, the lady comes up and she just starts talking. I'm like, "That's Barb. I know that's Barb." She didn't look exactly the same. She'd lost some weight, but she has some very particular mannerisms, and I recognized them. And so I just could not believe it. I just could not believe it. I was like, imagine what this is like. I'm in this very controlled space. There's nothing I could do. I can't reach out to her. I can't tell him, hey, look, I can't do any of those things. So I'm just stuck there, like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. And it was Barb. Barb, the same Barb that was the director of the program I went to in 95.
Mhm.
And she was his professor.
Wow.
And so that was just, it's really mind-blowing
Mhm.
to that she had these impact on these lives that ended up together. So we just can't get over that.
That's cool.
And I would, there was another Barbara too. So Barb is Barbara, another Barbara, she was an attorney, and she represented several of the
Oh
lifers.
yeah, she was
Yeah.
famous. That name was famous through letters and through
Yeah.
writs and all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah, so she was definitely a part of our story,
Mhm.
and she really helped him um understand what what is required of you, to in the courts, the way the courts look at things.
Mhm.
She really helped him see things from a different perspective. So when, we met. He was, there was no guarantee that once I learned what it was and what he was there for and all of the other details and how long he's been there and, what his charges and what the sentencing was and all of that stuff. Once I learned all of that, um, I really had to honestly ask myself, are you willing to marry this person even if they never get out? Even if they never get out. I really had to think about that and pray about that. And well, the answer that I came up with. So, I mean, I really believed he would get out, but I knew that there was no guarantee. I knew there was no guarantee. I really did. And I always tell him he's like the best thing that ever happened to me.
Amen.
He helped me a lot even from in there, you know. So, and to I have to tell you, so today I would have to mention my church because I love it so much. So I went to Harvest for like 10 years or so, and we were both going there when he first came home, and we stopped going.
Wait,
Go ahead.
wait. Let's back up though, because you fast
First
forward
came home?
you fast
Too
forward the
fast
story.
forward?
Yeah, you fast forward the
Okay.
story though.
Okay, what do
So
you want?
him being a lifer with no guarantees. I
Yeah.
know he was probably, putting the hope in the letters and hey, it's going to happen, blah blah blah. But in reality, yeah, I mean, there was lifers starting to come home by this time, but it still wasn't a guarantee that
Right.
everyone was
Yeah.
coming home, right? I mean, the doors were opening, but it was still, a
No
process.
guarantee.
Yeah.
For sure.
So when you married him while in custody,
Right.
correct? You made that commitment. Hey, I'm
Yep.
gonna marry this guy.
Yeah.
Whether he comes home or not, from
Right.
here on out, I'm gonna support him as a wife, and things are looking the way it's looking, right? You guys are getting closer, and
Yep.
at this time, there
Uh,
you weren't allowed conjugal visits at this point, still
no,
though, right?
no.
Okay.
No, we never did, but we never were. But I was gonna say something about
Mhm.
that. He actually had 2 denials
Mhm.
before he came home. And one of them was in the very beginning when we
Yeah.
first started talking. So he
Did
was
you
pretty down in the dumps.
did you have your hopes up with that, not knowing the process, like just knowing he was going to board? And I don't know how Joseph worded it or whatever, but it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is the parole board, like this is where they decide whether or
No,
not
he
I get to
was
go
he was
home.
really he gave me all the details about how everything worked.
So
Yeah,
when
he
it
was
was so when
very
it was a denial, did you feel like kind of crushed? Like, did
I
you have hopes that he was coming home?
yeah, I really did, but I think he was more crushed than I was.
Mhm.
So I don't look back and say, "Oh, that was a crushing blow." I look back at what a crushing blow it was for him,
Yeah.
because
Because you were prepared already. Hey, I know the circumstances.
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
here.
Yeah.
I bought into this.
Yeah, I'm not in there in that way, so I
Yeah.
haven't lived those last years, the so many years that he's lived that.
Yeah.
And, as a wife, of course, it's disappointing, but I don't remember it being I remember how crushed he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give you a quick little break, real quick,
Yeah.
like a little commercial.
Yeah.
My relationship with her husband. So the way I'm speaking, it's obvious. I know him, right? So
Yeah.
me and her husband, Joe Farias, first encountered one another. I believe it was like in 1994 in the Youth Authority. He was a young man like myself, coming in with a life term. And most of you guys that are following now know my story. I was sentenced to 45 years to life for a crime I committed at 16 years old. And I ended up in the Youth Authority in YTS in Chino. And this is where this young man comes in. And I believe, I'm not sure, but I believe you gave your life somewhere in the county jail, juvenile hall. Juvenile hall. So by the time he came to our facility in YTS, um, he was a Christian. And you guys know my story. I got saved a little bit before then. And I already had like a little pool within the chapel and within the unit and whatnot. And here this young man comes from the IE, say the IE, right? Colton to be exact. Colton, right? Riverside, Colton area. And man, becomes part of my inner circle. That's how close we were. We were righteous Christian brothers looking out for one another, clowning one another, due to him being a Raider fan. Yeah, I didn't hold that
You
too
just
too
said it.
personal against him, but I still chose to kind of, take him along. I had been saved probably a few years before him. I was already teaching the word of God, so I had the opportunity to speak into his life as well. And I remember, like, we would always get kites out one way or another to one another. We kind of knew where we were once we left YA and traveling the system. And I remember I came home years before him. I came home in 2003 when no lifers were coming home, right? All God, all God. If you don't know the story, might as well do a commercial while I'm here, right? You could check it out in my book, Reformed: How a Life Sentence Became My Saving Grace, right? If you haven't read it, you should read it soon. You could download it on your phones, whether you got a Droid or Apple phone. You could go to the library, get that, right? Um, but I remember when I came home and the brother called me, and he called me from a cell phone. I remember chewing him out. I yelled at this brother. I was like, hell no. Because at that time they still weren't free phone calls. When you got a collect call, it was a collect call still. It's not like today where it said you won't be charged for this call. Go ahead, hit 5. Back then it was like, yeah, do you accept this call and pay for this call? And I remember when I didn't hear that message, I kind of scolded him, because at this time when I was in prison, there was no cell phones. But by this time, years later, it seemed like everybody had a cell phone, right? But even then, I knew cell phones were contraband. I know my boy's doing life, and I'm like, what are you doing with the cell phone, fool? Like, you trying to stay in prison more? Because I was hearing these stories about cell phones, people getting caught with cell phones in there. They were automatically getting, denials. And as his older Christian brother, I'm telling him, like, what's wrong with you, fool? Like, hang up and call me back on a regular phone. I ain't gonna take this phone call. Like, I'll pay for the collect call, but I don't want you getting in trouble with this cell phone, right?
Yeah.
Little I know, this is how he was on social media, talking the love talk, huh? But yeah, that was just a little commercial of my story with her husband. Me and her husband go back, man, almost 30 years. Yeah, 30, probably about 31 years. That's how far back we go back, and I'm proud of him. And I'm excited just to throw this out there. I don't know if she was going to throw it out there, but I'll throw it. But 23 years, Joe, how long did you do? 20, 20 years, 8 months, 10 days. And you've been out how long now? 15 years? Dang, I thought it was like 10 years. Oh, 2015.
12.
13 years my brother's been home and is thriving. And as she has already mentioned, he graduated from substance abuse counseling in there, came home and pursued it. It's doing great, right? But I wanted to say this. So he's in the process right now of getting his certificate of rehabilitation. And man, that's a big thing, Joe. And man, I lacked on that, Joe. I've been home all this time, but when we went, he called me one day. He was at the college and he said, hey, they're doing free live scans for all us lifers. They're going to get us into court. And now you're in court, right? I'm like, man, I've been good all this time, but I got to pursue it though, because someone did call me though from ARC. They called me and they're like, hey, are you still interested? But I was working and I was like, I'll call you back or call me tomorrow or something, right? So I got to get on that, man. I definitely got to get on that, but I'm like very proud of you, Joe. I'll have to get him on here to share his whole story. She wanted to tag team with him. And look, we're already an hour and a half into this. I said, there ain't no way, because Joe's going to take about 3 hours to share his story, right? But yeah, so we're going to just jump right back in. Tell me how you felt though the actual when he found out he was coming home, when you found out he's coming home after 20 years. And you had been involved with him how long
I
before
think
that
it was
happened?
about 3 years.
About 3 years. Okay. So,
Yeah.
man, that's a commitment. There's
Yeah,
a lot of
about 3
wives with
years.
kids and everybody that need their
yeah.
husband at the gate, even the
Yeah.
beginning. So you actually put in 3 years with him,
Yeah.
which ain't easy. Because
No,
knowing
it's
him, I
not.
know there was there was some tough times even in them 3 years dealing with them. Huh?
Yeah, for sure. Just the whole deal of what it is, like
I'm gonna push this a
It's
little bit
just a lot.
closer.
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry.
go ahead.
Just the whole process of a visit has so many ins and outs and ups and downs.
Oh,
Just the
yeah.
process of a visit, that in of itself,
Mm.
it's like, I mean, it's prison. It's not a playground. So those things are there for a reason. But yeah, I mean, again, I was okay. I mean, I think I was mostly concerned about him because, like, how overwhelming is this right now? How you can't even believe it until it's real. Like, you're telling me I'm going home in this many days, but let's see. Because even after they tell you that, everything starts to fall into place just right. It's a
Yeah.
process. And then all of those things weigh on you. So I was mostly, um, I mean, I was good with God's timing on everything for the most part, but I was mostly concerned for, Joseph. He's very,
Emotional. Go ahead,
how do
say
you
it.
say
I'll say it. Feelings. Yeah, I'll say it for you.
like he's very to the T about everything. He's very much in the details of everything. And I think mostly I was just, trying to keep him up, keep him encouraged and out of his head as much as possible about it. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, the transcripts from that hearing, I mean, it's like this thick and I read it all in like one shot. It's like you can't put it down. Like, it's amazing the way that hearing went and the people that were there. Like, some of these people, I mean, these are people making decisions about people's lives. So, and some of them are pretty well known, um, known for the opposite of what I read in those papers. So it was just a lot to read that.
Mhm.
It was pretty fascinating as far as that goes. But yeah, I was really just trying to be there for him and knowing like how hard that's gonna be, and as much as you want to get out of there, like how hard that's gonna be. Like, you don't just step out and, like, okay, so many things have changed. Life is different. People are different. There's been a lot of the technology alone, you know.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, like I said, I was just thankful for him because regardless if he was in there, he was always encouraging me. He was always supportive and understanding, and he's just all around good guy.
Yeah. So when
So
he first came home, he went straight with you, or did
he
he go to
did
a
not.
program? He went to a program first, right?
Right. And he didn't have to, but we talked about it and we thought maybe it might be better if he did, just so he could have a minute to decompress as a
Mhm.
human being, you know, and not have all the pressures of, oh, I've got to be this and that. And you know what I mean? So that he did initially go to a program, but he was there for like a week and we were like, this doesn't make any sense. So he did end up coming home like about maybe after 8 days or something. It just the whole logistics of the whole thing just made no sense.
Mhm.
It really didn't. And he wasn't really gaining anything from where he was at.
Yeah.
He wasn't benefiting from it the way that we thought he might. And so he did end up coming home right after that.
Mhm.
So he was only there for like a week.
What was that like? Just having them there with you day in, day out?
It's a huge change.
Big
It's a
time.
huge change. It really was. Um, when you have kids, especially when they're older, then these relationships take time to develop.
Yeah.
And that's always going to be challenging. But for the most part, I mean, we didn't have any problem. He's just the most supportive person. Like, he was born to do what he does. Like, he
Mhm.
literally, um, when I talk about him when he's not around, I always say he's just one of those guys. Like, he literally wants to know your story. He's genuinely interested in you and your story, and so,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, we faced all the normal challenges anyone would. Um, from
That ain't
going from seeing each other once in a while to
Them
seeing
ain't
each
normal
other,
challenges though.
seeing well, in this situation, I mean,
Yeah.
just being with each other all the time as opposed to just those short pieces that you get.
Yeah.
It's getting to know each other even. on a whole different level because you don't really know people if you don't live with them.
Yeah.
So, but overall, I think we've done pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're pretty well rounded. And I think because we both know the Lord at the end of the day, we both follow the same guidebook. And so that eliminates half the problems right there because we both already know what the answer is.
Yeah.
When you have that in common, that we're not going to argue about dozens of things that regular couples are going to argue about because we both know what God's word says, and that's the authority that we choose to put ourselves under. So when you have that, it takes a lot of the guesswork out of. We don't have to sit here and argue about who's right and this and that, which we've never. I gotta say, Joseph has been. He really amazes me. I don't know if just because of the wreckage of relationships I had in the past, but like as long as we've been together, and we're going to be 15 this year, married, he's never disrespected me. He's never called me out of my name. He's never, he just never has done any of those kind of things. Not once, ever. So I feel like
Not even
that's
during
commendable.
not even during Raider games. I mean, man, because I know most Raider fans, they get domestic. I mean, it's been a lot of years.
Yeah, he's
of
a whole
abuse.
different person in that aspect.
Okay, I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure because I was like, man, okay.
As far as our relationship.
Oh,
So,
okay, okay.
yeah. But no, even I've never seen him to do it another human at all. He's just a really even-keeled, very I guess he's probably learned a lot of wisdom. He has he's like hyper, what's the word he always says? Hyper vigilant. Yep, that's it. Yeah.
That's his positive affirmation, huh?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Man.
But yeah, we stopped going to church for a few years. I got caught up. And this is one of the things that I thought about that I really feel is important to share is that Christians, even walking with the Lord, you can make mistakes. You can backslide. I don't recommend it. I really don't recommend it because it's there's always consequences. God's going to take you back, and he's going to forgive you and he's going to forget about it, but we don't forget about it. And so, we have to what I will say is I just want to encourage the backslider if there's anybody watching, because as a Christian, when you find yourself not living as a Christian, it is confusing. You're like, but how can this happen? It doesn't make sense. And then you wonder, am I really even a Christian? It just can take you on so many roads, and the devil has a heyday on that. So I just want to encourage you, if you're struggling in your walk with the Lord, if you've fallen, get up, run to him. That's the lie. Run away. Don't run away. Run to him. He's not going to club you over the head. He's not going to do that to you. Right. So I definitely wanted to share that because I've had my ups and downs, and I really, in my Christian walk, and I think a lot more people do that don't talk about it. And so because of that, I think the perception is that it doesn't happen, but it does happen. It doesn't happen to everybody, and it doesn't have to happen. Let me say that. But it does happen to some people. Right. And I'm just like learning to just stay close to him every day, because apart from him, I can do nothing, and I can't live life without him. I can't do this on my own without,
Again, if you don't, if you don't mind, we're an hour and a half in.
Yep.
We're gonna open up the phone lines just in case you guys that are walking. If anyone would like to call in, the number's on the board right there: 626-367-9275.
Awesome.
If you don't get a hold of us on the first try, just keep calling, okay? Because sometimes we'll get multiple calls coming in, and we don't want to cut them off. But we will open up the phone lines real quick. Jen, I just want to say you've done a tremendous job this far. I appreciate you being brave and courageous, because it's definitely not easy to jump
Yeah.
on here and just, yeah, I know, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I know people always say that it looks easy, or oh, yeah, I'll go share my
No.
story. Then all of a sudden, you don't know how many people end up backing out. I mean, from being a guest because they're like, nah, I don't want to do it after
It
all.
crossed my mind, I'll tell you.
And it's taken a year, just for the record. It's taken a year to get her out here, right? And I'm glad that you know what you were in prayer about it all, and
Yeah, for
because it's
sure.
it's not easy. I know she probably made it look easy, but it's not easy.
I don't think I made it look
Sharing these
easy.
things. And Joseph, you may have to patch her up on the way home because you know what it's like. You know what I'm saying? When we share our story, man, it's like the devil don't like to hear
Yeah.
this victory report and how to overcome, all the trauma and all the different issues that we face in life. The devil wants to
Yeah.
keep us bound and
Yeah, he sure does.
and defeated, but hearing Jen's story, you know that there's victory. There is
Yeah.
victory in the battle. So for you that are going through the battle, just know,
There's
that
hope.
God's not a respecter of people, that God is more than able and willing to get you, you know, in that victory.
Yeah.
But yeah, though, we'll stick around for a minute, see if anybody's called. Because a lot of times people are afraid to call in too. I'm like, what the heck? Why are they afraid to call in? Got all these comments, and all of a sudden it goes silent, right? Oh, let me make sure I got. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry, man. Maybe they are trying to call in. I still got it on Do Not Disturb. Sorry, because if I don't have it on Disturb, if you were calling, call back. Sorry about that. I probably have like
Well,
about
let me
three
just
missed
share
calls.
while we're waiting to
Yeah,
see if
yeah.
anyone wants to call in. I just want to share that again, we weren't going to church for a while, and it's right around the 2-year mark. We said ago, we were like, we got to get back to church. COVID had just passed, and we didn't stop going to church because of COVID. Let me just say that it was just lazy spiritually. I think, if anything, that's what I would call it. But plus some other things that had happened. But nothing to do with the church, to be clear. But anyway, we went not church shopping, but looking around for a new home church. And I'm so excited to share with you that we did find a good church. And I just have to say something about it because it's been really wonderful to be back in fellowship with people that love the Lord and people that live like they love the Lord. And we went to several churches and we ended up at Calvary Chapel Inland in Harupa Valley. And I just have to thank them for welcoming us. And if you're looking for a church in the area, we will welcome you to come.
Amen. Amen. Praise God.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
Man. Yeah. And when I think of your guys' story, because I thank God that Joseph has confided in me, a few different times. I was glad when he joined the team over here at NCADD. I had the chance
Oh yeah,
to see him in action, and I see his compassion in helping
yeah,
people. And like you said, that's his heart. That's his heart's desire to help people get better. And I had the opportunity, to be right there and oversee him and see him at work, and it was exciting. Got to break bread with him more often than not,
yeah. I know he loved that time, being able to spend that time with you.
Yeah,
He
and
really
I
did.
appreciate them awesome salads you would make for us sometimes because he would be like,
Oh
"Yeah, Jen
yeah.
hooked these up for." I was like, "Man, I really wanted a burrito," but he'd bring these salads with fruit in it and all kinds of stuff and crispy lettuce. I'm like, "Dang, he make me want to eat healthy." You know what I'm saying? Yeah, but
Thanks for the reminder. I forgot what I don't even remember the last time I made a salad.
oh my goodness. But yeah, though, we had some good times, and I have some great memories with your husband, and I'm
Yeah.
grateful. And I'll say this because I know you were there for him during probably the hardest time of his life, losing his father. And man, for
Yeah.
him to have you as a backbone to his spine, because that's a hard minute. I know what it was like losing my father, and you know
Yeah.
because I could speak for myself, being away from my father who taught me a lot of good, and kind of felt like I let him down all them
Mhm.
years, of like going in a whole different direction than what he would want for me. And I don't know if Joe felt that same way, towards his father, but I know he loved his dad. I know he,
Oh
honored his
yeah.
father. And for you to be there with him, and it's like
Yeah.
you guys, man, you guys are the real deal. You know what I mean? Just down to earth people, man, loving the Lord, loving other people. And I seen just a couple of weeks ago, you guys were at a youth conference,
Yeah.
just
Youth
pouring into the
retreat. That
youth.
was a blessing. It really
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
Appreciate you guys, man. Just continue doing what you do for the Lord. And man, Jen,
Yeah.
hearing
It's
your
a
story,
privilege,
I
man.
never, you know
It's a
what, sis?
privilege.
I've known you these years, you know what I mean, since he's come home, and I never knew this about
Yeah.
you. Never knew you had recovery in you. Never knew
Yeah.
none of that stuff, man. I was blown away as you just started sharing, and I was like, man,
Yeah. Everybody has a story.
yeah.
Yeah.
And as much as you try
Well,
to
thank you for.
minimize, as much as you try to minimize, because you're like, yeah, my story is no different. It kind of is. Yeah, I know you're humble in sharing your story, but you know what? You had definitely been through a lot, and I know, what I'm saying, as strong as people may think we are,
Yeah.
some of us are going to be in recovery to the day we die. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, real talk.
Yeah.
You know, I know we have the Lord Jesus Christ, and He set
Got
us
to stick
free, and
close.
He's given us, a new life, a new start. But some of us, man, we, like you said, we got to stay close, what I mean, to
Yeah.
that accountability and that
Yeah.
aspect of
For sure.
knowing how easy, like you said. And I heard you saying, you don't encourage nobody to backslide. And let me just say this, man, being real, there's people that don't have a chance to repent in their backsliding conditions. They
Amen.
will die. They
Amen.
will die in their backsliding. They will die in their addiction, because it's not guarantee a comeback. It's never a guarantee
Yeah.
that you're going to make it back from walking away.
Especially
Or
nowadays with the stuff out there, you don't even know what you're getting. You have
yep,
no idea. People
yep,
are dying every day because they don't even know what they're taking
yeah,
or smoking
crazy.
or whatever.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, very crazy. Well, sis, it looks like everybody's acting gun shy on these phone lines, so we're going to
It's
go
all
ahead
good.
and we're going to get ready to shut it down. But before I shut it down, I know a lot of my viewers, because I'm their coach, I'm their life coach, and a lot of what you talked about they go through. I have a couple of people that are going through abandonment issues,
Mhm.
people that have been in abusive relationships, people that have tried to get clean and sober over and over again and still battling.
Yeah.
And I mean, your
Yeah.
testimony, I mean, you've already shared enough. But if you don't mind, just like this last minute, looking into that camera right there on the right side
Okay.
and talk to that person, that's going through what you just shared. Tell them the way out.
Yeah. There's only one way out. And that is Jesus Christ. He is the way to freedom. Um I'm sorry if you have something else you're expecting, that's all I can give you because I'm going to give you what's real. Jesus is real, and he has all the power. We don't understand the power we have access to. Um I'm not going to say that going to meetings, going through therapies and those kind of things, they might be necessary. You may have to work through some stuff. That is important. But at the end of the day, Jesus Christ died on a cross to save us from our sin. And that's what it is. It's sin. It may be of our own doing, but it's still sin. We're not victims. We all make choices and decisions, and there's consequences for those. But even with that, Jesus is the answer. Just give him a chance. People um open a Bible, crack open a Bible, see what's in there. These words are alive and powerful. Jesus is the answer. I don't know how else to say it. It just sounds so simple. And it is, but I think at the end of the day, you just have to be willing to surrender, to be willing to throw in the towel and say, I can't do it. If you could have done it, you would have done it already. We wouldn't be talking about it if you could do it. None of us could do it without him, whether it's drugs or alcohol or pride or whatever it might be. Um, we have to put him first. He's capable of fixing every single problem, healing every hurt, meeting every need, and he'll never leave you or forsake you. He's someone you can count on. People are still turning to this man. We gauge time itself by his death and birth. I mean, by his death, his life. His life is how time was created based on him. So I just say, give him a chance. What have you got to lose?
Amen. 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 There it is there, man. Jesus Christ, the way, the truth, and the life, right? Hey, I just wanted to thank you guys for tuning in once again on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. I know you guys could be doing so much more right now on this beautiful day, but you guys chose to be here with us. And thank you. Don't forget to hit the subscribe, hit the like, drop a comment. Don't forget to share it. And we'll see you next Sunday. Actually, I know a lot of you have heard my story. You guys have probably seen it all over YouTube, probably. I'm going to be going live with someone from the East Coast right now at 5 p.m. Pacific time. I'm ending this podcast, and then I got to be on a podcast. It's this guy. It's going to be one of them cross streams because, of course, I think he's in New York somewhere. I'll be going live on his channel at 5 o'clock. It's called Investing Yourself. It will be the one where there's all kinds of like mobsters and all kinds of different testimonies. He has a couple of live ones there. He has quite a few, but I'll be sharing my testimony at 5 p.m. Pacific time on that YouTube channel. It's called Investing Yourself. I forgot his real name. I don't even know his real name, but it's called Invest in Yourself podcast. So anyways, you guys have a great weekend. Have a great week. And we'll be back next Sunday. God bless you guys. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.